guys, how's it going? Sam here with another Soulstone Survivor video, and today we're just going to be going over 5 things that I kind of wish I knew when I started playing the game to hopefully make your guys' lives a little bit easier and just give you a better understanding of the game. And just going to hop right into it with the first thing, and that is going to be characters. So certain characters have a select amount of skills that they are able to have access to, basically. So every character has access to, I would say, like the base level of different skills. So like with Berserker, you are able to get some things like Firebolt and Poison Bolt, but you're not going to get anything crazy like Acid Rain, for example, right away. And you're going to need to have runes to access those abilities. So when you go to runes, you'll see right here with the skill mastery, so it'll add up to 6 random active skills of type Holy for this one specific, but there's one for every single skill type. And it's that your character would not have access to otherwise in the skill pool. And so basically, this is just letting you know that there are skills that your characters don't have access to unless you have this rune or if you are playing that character. So if I was playing the Paladin, like I'm gonna have access to these skills, obviously. But if I was playing the, I think it's the Death Knight. Yeah, okay. I wasn't sure, you know, is that a copyrighted term from WoW? But if you're playing Death Knight, you're not going to have access to these 6 skills. So by getting these runes, you're going to be able to have access to those skills on other characters. And the way that you get those skills is going to be through getting your characters up to, I believe it's going to be doing the 12-minute and under for these ones. Yeah, so if you beat any map, it just is any map with any curse intensity under 12 minutes, you're gonna have access to these runes. That way you have access to extra skills, and then you can kind of build your characters a little bit different. So I mean, say you want to go a melee build but you don't want to play a melee character, you totally can, but it might not be the greatest thing in the world. But if you wanted to go crit, for example, the Sentinel has really high crit if you're using the first or the second, and if you're using the second weapon, you get some more, you know, health, some more body mass, etc. So you could do some extra cool things with that. Going into the second thing, that's going to be on materials. First of all, just want to say that materials are really not that important. As you can see, I have a lot of different materials all the way up to the legendary ones, and it's not really something that you need to be worrying about in the first place, just because one of the things that I would say they are very far kind of behind on implementation is going to be weapons. So there's only 6 weapons out right now for the first 6 characters, and it's only the uncommon weapons. If you look at your materials, I mean, we have all, I think it's 5 tiers of material types, so obviously there will most likely be 5 different tiers of weapons. So it's gonna be a while before those materials become relevant, so don't stress yourself out in regards to getting materials. Another thing that I kind of wanted to go over was in regards to materials, when is really the best time to get these? So we'll kind of dash around here for a second. Actually, I'm going to play a different character just to make our life easier. While the Necromancer is fantastic, since he doesn't have a like auto attack ability, it's pretty hard to hit targeted things like the health crystals or the ores. So hop in right here, do a little fast forwarding so we can find a material. Alright, so here's a material. You know, they look pretty nondescript. It's pretty obvious that this is something you want to hit. They're glowing, nice and everything. They have HP bars of their own, but if you know, kill it really early on in the match, you're only going to get 2 of each material. So 2 in the grand scheme of things, not really that much. So we're going to go ahead and skip to near the end real quick. Alright guys, so just cleared that map. Stood in the bottom left corner, wasn't really focusing on getting anything, and you come out of it with 135 materials. Basically, the point is just don't worry about getting materials as fast as you possibly need to. They're going to come very readily, very quickly, without anything for you to worry about, and it's really not going to be that big of a like game changer for you to get these weapons like ASAP. If you want to, I totally understand. Definitely just rush them down, but in the grand scheme of things, you can just play the game comfortably and be able to get all the materials for the weapons very, very simply. One last little tip that I want to share with you is I'm playing on Curse 7 right now, and the amount of materials that you get is the exact same as you would in the beginning. The only difference is that you get higher tiered materials eventually later on in the game, so you don't need to play Curse 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, you know, to get the first 2 types of materials, which are the only ones that are currently needed to create those weapons. So if you are just trying to farm for those materials, the only reason you might want to play Curse, above 4 basically, or 3, is just because the games might last maybe a tiny little bit longer, so you'll get a lot more materials in the grand scheme of things. All right, moving on to the next thing, and that's just going to be, while flat damage may seem amazing in the first 5, I would say, curse levels, moving on to curse 6 and curse 7, flat damage is just significantly worse than dot damage eventually. Once you especially start going into the multiple overlord levels, the boss's HP is just scaling at a rate that flat damage just genuinely does not keep up with, unless you have one of the most insane like crit builds, or maybe you're going like 6 body slam and you have like 700, like 800 HP with an insane multiplier. For the most part, damage over time is going to be a huge help when these bosses HPs get over into the billions. I mean, they get into like 50-60 billion once you get like overlord 6 or 7. So definitely start to think about getting dot damage while you're playing. The nice thing about going into the overlord or the endless mode is that your EXP kind of resets, so you don't become a lower level, but it's like you just started the game, and killing the tier 1 mobs is going to level you up very fast, because as you get in, later into the game, it takes more and more experience for you to level up. So obviously you have less access to additional passives and weapon skills, and that is going to be a problem if you're not stacking dot early on. So say you go like heavy crit build, get through that first curse 6, curse 7, and you're going into overlord. You're going to be able to get a lot more levels as you go into those additional overlords 1, 2, 3, because the XP does scale with you. So that's really nice. But just a recommendation, start messing around with damage over time, start messing around with curse and doom stacks, and see how much damage you're really doing by going go 6 chromatic bolt. It is a blast. That's the one that applies the negative effect and ricochets. Running 6 of those is a very good time, so I highly recommend it. Moving on to the next thing, that's just going to be just plain and simple. Defense is not good. It's unfortunate, but unless you're playing like Paladin and stacking Smite, the ability that heals you, it's very hard to waste a level on block and armor. Behemoth, I'm not going to really just kind of complain about too much, because bonus health is always nice. I think it is worth putting points into Behemoth if you have the rare level up of Behemoth, which is going to be 45 extra HP, because that is about maybe very close to 1 boss hit, maybe like half of 1 boss hit when you're getting up into tier 7. But for the most part, block and armor are so inconsequential in comparison to the benefits you can get going a offensive passive that it's just genuinely not worth it. So I would just always recommend that unless you have one of the rare Behemoth roles in your passive skill tree and your passives also kind of suck, I would recommend picking it up then. But other than that, you really just want to stick with damage is good, defense is bad. This really turns into dashing and dodging abilities is so much more important. So agility is very good, making sure you have high movement speed. But if you ever get the chance to pick up another dash, I highly recommend it. And that kind of brings us into our next point, and that's just going to be how important dashes are. I would say tier 7 and overlord 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all of those get significantly easier when you go from a 2-dash character to a 3-dash, and they get significantly easier when you move into a 4-dash character. And the reason being, how dashes work in this game is you have these 3 little like squares right here, these diamonds, and these are your dashes. So currently with the Sentinel you have 3 dashes, some characters have 2, some characters have 3, depending on Ranger's a little bit mobile, the Assassin has 3 dashes, so it's very obvious. And what you kind of want to work on is making sure that you're always buffering these dashes. So if you're paying attention to down below right here in the middle, you'll see that all of your dashes share the same cooldown. So your first dash is really the only cooldown that matters. Every dash after that will come up at the same exact time as your first dash. And with 3 dashes, if you're really playing very I don't want to say frugal because you can dash very frequently when you have 3, but if you're playing pretty close to it, you can pretty much be dashing the whole time. And this is something that's really important when you have 60 billion HP bosses, and eventually you will have 6 bosses on the screen at the same time. So there's going to be a lot of abilities that you're going to be need to be dodging. The bosses also get an extremely insane amount of increased movement speed. So having dashes is extremely important, and knowing how to kind of just load them all up and buffer them so that you always constantly have a dash is super important. 3, I think, is a very comfortable place. 2, you will not have enough dashes when there are more than 4 bosses on the screen. Unless you have something, say, like Chaos Golem or some summons that are really taking up the time of those bosses, it's going to be really hard for you to move around the bosses. I think they're called Chaos Walkers, which are the copies of you. So you'll run into, after, I think it's tier 6 and 7, you'll run into characters that look exactly like the characters that you can play that have very strong AoE abilities. And then on top of that, you will be spawning like, I think 8 to 9 elites at a time when you have all of the curses on. So it's really important that you have these dashes. If you're able to get 4 dashes, you can pretty much just press spacebar and not have to worry about it, because you can almost do that with 3. When you have 4, you are extremely comfortable. So get comfortable with the dashes, get comfortable with buffering dashes, and if you ever have the chance to pick up an additional dash, definitely do it. It's going to make your life a lot easier, and I promise you're not going to be missing out in so many offensive stats in that one passive that a dash was not worth it. The biggest thing is that when you get into Curse 7, these health crystals are maybe healing you for like 15, 12, and bosses are hitting you for like 70 plus at a minimum. And as you can see, I have 120 HP, so I can get hit twice. And a lot of the times, once you get hit by one thing, you are going to be knocked into 8 million other AoEs. So you really only have one chance to dodge things, and you do have some iframes while you're dashing, like about 1, honestly. So you can use that to dash through abilities even if they're about to hit you. So it is just always extremely important. If you get one thing from this whole video, pick up the extra dash. It's going to make your life easier. That about wraps everything up, guys. I really appreciate all the support, and I hope to see you on the next one.